but over 138,000 bodies here. So all around me, right below me, I'm walking on a little path, a road, but I'm assuming, that's what I'm assuming. What's going on, everybody? How you doing today? Welcome to Louisville, Kentucky. A city that I love, a city I've been to many times. And right over there, I'm in Eastern Cemetery, it's called. See that wall there? Kind of right there. On the other side is Cave Hill Cemetery, which is a huge, massive historic cemetery with lots of famous people like Muhammad Ali, Colonel Sanders, a lot of politicians. It's huge. This is the smaller cemetery right beside. So there's her doing some work over there. Let's walk a little further down, because although this cemetery is very overgrown, they are working hard cleaning it up. You can see some overgrown here, mowed down here, mowed here, above the headstone, so people can possibly find their loved ones, if it's possible. You see some flowers. That's nice. So it's 28 acres, and this is known as the most overburied cemetery in America. There's a sign out front. I'm going to take you to it. I believe when I drove by, I saw the numbers they had written. I had read it's 16,000 graves proper, if you know what I mean. 16,000 actual graves with markers, or with markers, I would assume. But over 138,000 bodies here. So all around me, right below me, I'm walking on a little path, a road, but I'm assuming, that's what I'm assuming. Let's walk over there and read that sign. I'm gonna read you what this says. History of Eastern Cemetery. 15 acres incorporated in 1854 for Methodist Episcopal Church. By 1872, it doubled in size. Clark and Loomis designed Wake House, 1891. Eastern Cemetery Corporation built first crematorium in Kentucky, 1935. So the first crematorium. Modern building erected, 1957. Cemetery abandoned, 1989, when overburial exposed. Investigators say about 100,000 people in 30,000 graves. Resting place of diverse races, nationalities, veterans, Mexican War to Vietnam War. First black Kentucky legislator, Charles Anderson Jr., boxer Rudolph Stitch, Mayor Philip Tompert, William J. Simmons of Simmons College of Kentucky, educator Albert E. Mazik, Bishop Henry Bascom, Russell Neighborhoods, Washington Spalding. Okay, so I'm back over here into the back area now, and yeah, so that had different numbers, but that sign looks a little old, so I think as more information is coming out still to this day, discovering that more people are here. And I should say there's a website, Friends of Eastern Cemetery, that I believe do all the cleanup here and are trying to bring dignity and respect back to the people that are here, and they're doing a tremendous job. You can find a lot of information on that page. I'll put a link below in the description. And I was reading that this morning. It was quite fascinating. It's really nice. It's nice to see that people care enough to fix such a horrible, not a mistake. A lot of it was done on purpose. So if you look back there, there's a truck back there. So I've seen about 3 or 4 different trucks on the property, people working. And 1 or 2, there's my rental, and there's a small mausoleum there. We'll take a look. But there's graves all around me. Like all around me. And like as much work as they're doing, it's very overgrown, and there's like graves just here. Wow. Here. Down there. Like I said, some with flowers, but just all over. I'm gonna try to take you to different parts of the cemetery. Here comes another truck just driving through. So it was used for as a mass pauper's grave, so people who could not afford to get grave sites, who could not afford to be buried. So that was, like I said, the first crematorium was here too. He's going right by my car. I just gotta. He's doing okay. He knows what he's doing probably better than I would. But yeah, it was used for as a mass pauper's grave. So because of this, that led to it contributes to the imbalance in the numbers. Sorry, there's a lot of stuff going on. People stopping, and I'm not sure what's happening over there. It was in 1989, though, that the public became aware that the owners had also been reusing purchased grave sites. Well, everyone, as I was walking around, this gentleman came up and started talking to me, and as I was just mentioning the Friends of Eastern Cemetery, this is Andy Harpool, the president of the Friends of Eastern. Just so I can't remember what I was just saying. I was about to start giving the history of the cemetery. I had already said about how many burials. I don't think I have to do any more try to remember anything, because you know everything. I don't have to. Thank you. That saves me a lot of trying to figure out what I was talking about.
We try and make things easy for people out here.
So it's 16,000 graves, roughly 138,000 people. Is that the number we're at?
Yeah. So in Kentucky, you're legally allowed to bury I think 1,000 people per acre. This is 28.7 acres. But then when you take out the footprint of the big building in the back, all of the roads, a couple of other smaller buildings and all that, there's around 16,000 burials that are allowed here. The number isn't totally accurate, right. But around there, yeah.
So what happened? The owners in the 80s, they were reburying people mostly? Is it the mass paupers that?
No, so basically, the story goes, the cemetery was incorporated in 1848. There are stories that go all the way back into the 1800s where people were, there were things going on around here that were a little concerning. There's an old Courier Journal story from, I believe, 1895, where some of the neighbors over here were concerned because I guess there was some kind of a fence, and hogs were coming in under the fence and coming over to this area right here, actually, which was a pauper's area,
right,
and digging up bodies because they were only 10 to 14 inches deep.
Oh man.
And so that freaked a lot of people out. And so, there was, a couple other stories from that time period where things just weren't,
Mm-hmm.
And so it went on until 1989 when an employee who had been here, I think for about 5 months, Bob Allen, he had come from a different cemetery, and they put him on the crew to dig graves, and he noticed that when they would go to dig up graves, they would find bones, and a lot of bones and skeletons. And so he brought it up to the people. He's like, hey, we just went and started digging the grave you told us to go dig, and there's a casket. And a skeleton in. And they're like, just do what we told you to do.
Oh, really? So they... Thanks, man.
So
they just said, go ahead, put the
said,
next burial in.
They said, do what we told you to do. So, and he's like, well, what do I do about the bones? And they're like, just put it under, you know, there's, at a funeral, you'll have the dirt mound where they dig the hole and they'll put astroturf over it.
Yep.
Like, just put it in there, you know, put it under the dirt and put the astroturf over it. And he was like, all right. So that went on for, you know, however many months, 4 or 5 months. And finally he's like, this is just wrong.
Yeah.
I can't do this. So he called the Attorney General's office and basically kind of, he's like, hey, I'm an employee at a cemetery in Louisville. There's some really shady practices going on here and you all need to come and investigate. And so they came down kind of under the auspices of doing like, almost on a financial thing, like doing an audit.
Right.
And so they were like, yeah, come on in. So they got access to the books and then the records. And after a couple of days of looking through the records, they thought that they had figured out like a coding system. But then they were kind of thrown. They're like, we think we have a coding system, but I don't think it could be right. I don't think it is because the numbers just are insane. And so they brought in an archaeologist to do some digs to kind of see if and the archaeologist is like, what you see is correct. So when everything was said and done, they had documentation to support that there's around 138,000 people buried in 16,000 graves.
So they would take like families would come and say, we want to have our loved one buried here. They would take the documentation, they would keep that documentation and bury the person, but they would just file that, like leave the evidence kind of right out.
Well, you know, cemeteries have to have logbooks. They
Right.
have day books and you know, overall logbooks so that they know who's buried where. For instance, if you know you lost somebody and 20 years ago when you were a kid and you want to come back and find their grave. So kind of an interesting thing that we ran into. I think it was a year 3, so it's probably around 2016. This family came and started telling us this story about how they had come in here and, you know, back in the day, and they were looking for, I think it was their aunt's grave. And they went back to the office. They came in and tried to find it, but they're like, everything just looks different. And they're telling me this, and I'm like, man, I've had this conversation before, but it wasn't with them. And like, I've had it a couple times. And so they keep talking, and they're like, so we went back there and to the office and talked to somebody, and they pulled out a Rolodex, and I'm like, almost word for word, I've heard this before.
Right.
And so finally the light went off in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh. So what they were doing is, if you look, you can see these evergreen looking trees. These are called Japanese yew.
Okay. Oh, right here.
Yes. And they used to be everywhere. If you look around, they're still pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
But what they would do is, for a long time, when somebody came and bought a plot, they would give them a free shrub.
Right.
And they say that way when you come in, you know, you come straight up and then past a stone building, you look off to the right and you'll see the shrub next to your plot. Well, they knew that when the people would come back, these Japanese yew will grow 10, 15 feet a year.
Right.
So they came back. So the landscape was always evolving. And that was a tactic to confuse everybody. They come back looking for a shrub and be like, I don't see a shrub, so they had to go back to the office.
Right.
They get to the office and say, hey, I'm looking for so-and-so. I can't find them. I thought I knew where they were, but everything just seems different somehow. And they'd be like, oh, well, we're actually right in the middle of, we've got all the records for that area spread out down the basement. We're trying to redo it, and it's going to take about a year, but you can come back in a year or whatever. And
They just keep brushing people off.
yeah, so sometimes they come back and they'd either use the same excuse or a different excuse or whatever. But what they were doing is they were taking the Rolodex card and they were taking it out, putting it in a different Rolodex. That way, every month, every 6 months, whatever, they knew that Section A, which graves were getting visited, which ones weren't. So they knew where they could go and rebury, which graves to leave, which ones weren't getting any visitors.
Right.
so they knew which ones they could resell.
All this just to, I mean, it's money.
It's all money.
All money. Now, where are these owners now?
They, as far as I know, all of them had died except for one. So with that method though, what happened to the stones, right?
What?
Like when they were reburying, what happened to all the gravestones?
Right.
Where did they go? So for years there was a lot of urban legend, and people came up with a theory about rock crushers coming in and pulverizing them. Not with granite, you're not doing
Right.
that. Maybe with the marble and the sandstone monuments, okay, maybe. But there was another one about dump trucks coming in here in the middle of the night, them loading the dump trucks up with stones, taking them down to the river, putting them in a barge and dumping them out in the
Right.
middle of the river. Not very feasible. So in 2015, we have a guy named Jonathan Appel who travels the country and puts on workshops, hands-on historic cemetery preservation workshops, and teaches you the right methods, the right things to use to like fix broken stones, reset stones, and all that. So it was one day after the workshop, he and I were in the back, and we were kind of like leaning against a stone, and we're talking, and he's talking about going out and getting a beer afterwards or whatever. And he goes, "What's up with that stone over there?" He's from like up northeast.
Yeah.
He's got a real thick accent. "What's up with that stone over there?" I'm like, "I see like 1,000. Which one?" He's like, "That one there." And I'm like, "You're gonna have to show me." So we walk over, and the name on it, it's back there. It's Krug, Krug. And I'm like, "Well, what's wrong with it?" And he goes, "Well, if you look at all the stones, most of the letters are like they're countersunk in." He's like, sometimes you'll see it to where like the letters are actually raised off.
Right.
But this one, I'm trying to see if I can find one that's similar to what he's talking about. Basically, where the name is, the flat surface was countersunk in. When we walked over there, we noticed it was actually double countersunk in.
Oh no.
And I'm like, "What's wrong with it?" And he goes, "Well, look at the rest of them. They're like this, where it's flush." And I'm like, "Okay." And he goes, "Well, maybe they must have spelled something wrong." And so we looked at the backside of the stone, and there was words back there as well, names and dates, and double countersunk in too. And I'm like, "Well, it's weird that they would have screwed up on both sides." And then I was like, "Oh, wait a minute."
Yeah.
They resurfaced the
That's-
stones and resold them.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. Isn't that kind of a huge pain in the butt to like pick the stone up, take it into town, have it redone?" He goes, "Man, they can do it with a little handheld sandblasting rig."
That's what honestly, when you said, I was thinking right away, it has to be something, because if they're all about money, it has to be something really cheap that they're doing.
Quick, cheap,
Quick,
easy.
cheap. They're not bringing in dump trucks and barges. No, they're doing it here.
So that's what
Oh
we
my
figured.
God. What were they thinking though about the people that would come to visit the first person? They didn't think that. They just...
Well, evidently they kept meticulous records of who was getting visited and who
Right.
wasn't. So, with this cemetery being incorporated in 1848, there were a lot of families here when it first started that probably went out west to the gold rush and never came back.
Right.
And probably there's no written history, so they don't, the modern generation of that family doesn't know that they have relatives here. Now, I think as time went on, they're kind of banking. They sold plots here so cheap. I think they were kind of banking on the fact that maybe the people that they were selling the plots to couldn't afford gravestones a lot of times,
right.
and they could just be like, "Oh yeah, they're right there. That's where they're buried."
Yeah.
People take
Oh
them.
yeah, they're right there. Yeah.
So,
So possibly in all of these graves right here, we're looking at 10 to 20 bodies under each of them.
yeah. There are areas that are more heavily overburied than others. Like in the front, the original part of the cemetery, from what I understand from Phil de Blasi, who was the archaeologist involved forever, he said the front's not terrible.
Okay.
Because it's right there on the
Right
street.
there,
you can
yeah.
see. And then there's actually a little kind of a D-shaped circle over here.
Okay.
That's the most heavily overburied. Each grave is probably like, I think it's between 8 and 10 burials
Oh my
per
gosh.
grave. What you notice, there's 4 different iterations of the maps for this place in different years, all the way from like 1880 to, I think the latest one was 1994. The other thing you notice is the road is slightly moved
Right.
or modified. And what they were doing is they were, moving the road over existing graves, digging new graves when that area would fill up.
I was actually going to ask you, is this possibly other graves underneath this road?
What you'll notice is when you go around the corner and you get back to this area here, you start doing this, and it's getting worse and worse as time goes by. If you were to go lay down in one of those dips, it's going to be the same size as you. Oof. And that's because they paved right over graves. When they did the investigation, the investigator asked him, is there anything else I need to see? And Bob's like, well, you should probably come down to the garage. And so they went down there and went in the garage, and evidently there were boxes and boxes and boxes that would have like 4 legs, 6 arms, a baby. I mean, just all kinds of different mixtures.
I read that somewhere online. That said some people had found body parts on the grass or in a fast food bag or something.
Bones, yeah.
Bones,
in the dump truck, yeah.
This place has quite. So who's in here? Do we know?
So that's actually not like a mausoleum or anything.
Oh, it's not.
That is actually that was built in 1895. I have the original blueprint for it and a tattoo of it.
Oh, nice.
That was designed by Clark and Loomis. Back, and it's kind of weird to talk about now, but back in the 1800s, when there were a couple different pandemics that rolled through Louisville.
Right.
You had like scarlet fever, you had Spanish flu, yellow fever, and this is back before there's funeral homes, and so people would generally have like the wake in the parlor of the home.
Right.
And people were kind of like getting sick and dying, and so people were like, we don't really know why. So they kind of started coming up with theories of maybe what was making people sick.
Right.
So a popular theory at the time was when they were going to like a wake at a home, just being around the corpse might be what's making everybody get sick and die. So Clark and Loomis came up with the idea, why not make a structure outside of the home where people can come and do a wake? And so that's actually a wake house.
Oh, wow.
We believe that the limestone is quarried from over in Cave Hill. And if you look inside, on each side, there are 6 basically shelves that are about casket size. So they would put caskets in there and do the visitation. And in the wintertime, it also doubled as a storage facility for when the ground was frozen.
Right. And they couldn't bury somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you actually see inside?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh. Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow.
So I was told about that, and we were able to secure a couple of different grants over the course of 2 years. One was to get the whole building tuck pointed because a lot of the grout had deteriorated.
Right.
And so the concern was it's going to start shifting and fall apart. That's what they were saying, that the building's going to fall down if we don't do something quick. So we got that taken care of. And then the next year we got another grant to have the gates completely taken off, disassembled, cleaned off, reassembled and fixed. Like the top part was gone. There was a big hole down here. So we had them completely restored and then put back on.
So that on the left and the right, that's where the caskets would be, right?
Yeah, yep. All the shelves on the left and right.
Wow.
So it's actually a really neat, yet another really unique thing about this cemetery that you're not going to see in a lot of places.
No, I don't think I've ever seen a wake house before. Oh, you got your 4th of July and Veterans Day flags, all that. That's really cool. That's sweet. That's nice. Well, Andy, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was amazing.
Absolutely.
Good luck.
Thanks for helping us get our story out.
Yeah, thank you. guess this is what he meant with the, if you like, yeah, I could feel them. There's dips in the cement. So they moved the road even to fit more bodies in. Wow. Oh, here. More like this. Yeah. Yes, wow. Look it off in the distance there. The cemetery is huge. 28 acres, 28.6 acres, he said. There are graves everywhere. Everywhere. So right over here in the back, this is that one grave he was saying as an example. There's many more like this, Krug, where there's more than one person buried here, not just the Krug family or Mr. and Mrs. Krug, I'm not sure who, but other people, because they've buried this, they've shaved this down, the name, I guess, put a new name in. And that's the one he was telling us about. Wow. That is unbelievable. So you can see, yeah, they've basically taken out the old name, put a new one in. That's roughly carved too. It's not even a good job. Wow. That was incredible running into Andy. Thank you, Andy. I'll put a link below to that website, Friends of Eastern Cemetery. Wow. Incredible story. Mind-blowing and horrific. Rest in peace to everyone buried here. All the bodies beneath me. Love you all. Thanks a lot. And thanks again, Andy. Peace out.